conqueror. That's the thing that's inside of him that leads him to be the GOAT. And without that, you don't get there. There's a thing inside some people that is a driving force that allows them to overcome the greatest around them.
Think Michael Jordan, the ultimate cleaner. Michael never cared about achieving mere greatness. He cared about being the best ever. Larry Bird is a cleaner. Kobe, Dwayne, cleaners. Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, Charles Barkley. In the business world, we're talking about Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Most presidents are cleaner. And good luck getting re-elected if you're not. Stardom doesn't make you a cleaner.
Jon Jones is not just the greatest fighter to ever walk into an octagon. He is the most fascinating contradiction the sport has ever produced. From the moment he walked through Mandalay Bay as a nobody, a PR staffer told him one day people would swarm him everywhere he went. He laughed it off, said, "Yeah, sure," with the casual confidence of someone who already knew exactly where he was headed in this sport. He looked up to Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods as his ideal champions, clean, dominant, unstoppable forces who bent entire eras to their will. His stated goal was to climb to the very top of the ladder and become a leader and role model for every young athlete watching. That version of Jon Jones, humble, hungry, and genuinely inspiring, was the fighter the entire world wanted to believe in without reservation.
Yeah, he was humble. He was
confident.
But confident.
I remember walking through Mandalay Bay. I talked to one of the guys, I think, on the PR staff. And he's like, right now I'm escorting you to your room and, no one knows who you are. And he's like, one of these days, people are going to swarm you when you walk through this arena. And he's like, people are going to know who you are one day. And I was just like, yeah. He's like, yeah. So I was like, trust me, you just wait.
Growing up, I always looked at, Michael Jordan and like Tiger Woods before his controversy. I looked at these guys as being the ideal champion.
I have a goal and I have a dream in the sport, and that's to make it to the very top of the ladder. Being some sort of leader and a role model to, younger athletes who want to do the same things or similar.
But inside every cleaner, there is a dark side that refuses to be taught, refuses to be contained, and refuses to follow the rules. The DWI arrest came first. His Bentley wrapped around a telephone pole, police on scene, Jon Jones admitting he had been driving drunk. It was not just a personal failing, it was the first public signal that the Hyde inside him was already running loose. The Jekyll wore the championship belt and smiled for the cameras, while the Hyde made the calls that no rational person would ever make. Joe Rogan had championed this man as potentially the greatest of all time, and now the cracks in the foundation were already visible. The pattern was starting, actions that didn't just chip at his reputation, but took a sledgehammer directly to everything he had built.
When you're a cleaner, you have a dark side that refuses to be taught good.
Jon Bones Jones was arrested and charged with a DWI early Saturday morning.
Police say Jones was behind the wheel of his 2012 Bentley, which crashed into a telephone pole.
Jones admitted he was driving drunk.
Do you know the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? A respected upstanding doctor discovers a potion that temporarily turns him into a dark, sinister predator. Jekyll lives quietly by the rules. Hyde acts on impulse and instinct. Hyde does whatever he wants and doesn't care about consequences or whom he has to.
Then came the confession that nobody in the sport was fully prepared to hear coming out of a man at his level of talent. He admitted, straight-faced, that he had partied himself into the ground before his legendary fight with Alexander Gustafsson and won despite it. He said he knew he didn't deserve to win that fight. He said it like a man confessing to a priest without guilt. The cocaine metabolite test came next, then the revelation that he left rehab after a single night because he never technically said how long he'd stay. Drinking to the point of blacking out every weekend while still training, this was the operating system running beneath the championship surface. For everyone who believed in the discipline and sacrifice that elite competition demands, this was not just a disappointment, it was a direct assault.
I don't know if there's a better example than Tiger Woods, whose now famous dark side led him to become involved with a dozen or so women who were not his wife. Tiger had done such a good job of wearing the mask and hiding his dark side that people were just blown away by the revelation that Jekyll was smiling for the camera and making the commercials, and Hyde was handling everything else. Once the story came out, his career began to deteriorate in every way conceivable. His dark side evaporated.
His family's reaction hit harder than any headline because it stripped away the spectacle and replaced it with something devastatingly human and real. His mother called his arrest a blessing from God. She said it stopped him in his tracks before something far worse could happen. She and her husband considered it divine intervention, a mercy handed down before the Hyde fully consumed what the Jekyll had spent years constructing. The dark side had no place at the family dinner table, but it kept showing up uninvited and wrecking everything it touched around him. His actions were not just attacking his career or his public image, they were quietly destroying the peace of the people who loved him most. That is the cost that never makes the highlight reel, the toll paid in private by the people standing closest to the storm.
Be honest about that. How much did you train for that fight?
I partied my tail off for Gustafsson, and I won the fight knowing I didn't deserve to win that fight.
Watch this. I control it all. It doesn't control me. I own this.
What gets John in trouble is because every four weeks before his fight, he likes to blow off a little bit of steam.
Blow off a little literally, a little too literally.
Yeah, a little too literally.
UFC champ Jon Jones said that he'd take his drug treatment program very seriously after testing positive for a cocaine metabolite in a December 4th drug test.
The hit and run involving a pregnant woman was the moment where disbelief turned into something closer to genuine horror among the people who followed him. He crashed into her, bolted from the scene, and later admitted he had been partying before he ever got behind the wheel that night. Those around him said it plainly. There is something in him that keeps pulling him back to that place no matter what. He called himself his own worst enemy without flinching, with the flat certainty of a man who had reviewed the evidence and reached his verdict. People around him kept saying, "Get your act together," and he kept nodding and then doing exactly what he had always done before. His clean performance against Ovince St. Preux was the first fight he prepared for properly, and he pointed to it like a haunting proof of concept.
Never said for how long. Jones's mother, Camille, admitted Monday that her son left the rehab facility after just one night.
Drinking, every weekend pretty much, to the point of blacking out. Just
Blacking out?
Yeah, but still training my butt off.
What was the reaction from your family and friends?
Saying, quote, "I'm glad that this happened to John. This stopped him in his tracks. Me and my husband considered it a blessing from God that our child was able to be helped and know that he needs to stop before it came to something worse."
The dark side has no place at the family dinner table. Cleaners understand this, so they wear face on the mask is the person others want them to be.
You don't know me. No one knows me. You don't know me, are you?
So who are you? Who's the real Jon Jones?
They know they're not being themselves. The only time you can be 100% yourself is when you're connected to your dark side.
Pay attention closely and understand the many sides of my personality and who I am.
But they do what they have to do so they can ultimately do what they want to.
Jon Jones then admitted something that reframed his entire legacy in a single sentence that nobody in MMA had the courage to say out loud. He said his worst performance was the one he prepared for cleanly, suggesting the chaos was somehow woven into his competitive identity and fuel. Then the PED suspension arrived, and the narrative shifted from troubled genius to something the sport had a much harder time defending or contextualizing. His brother Chandler's issues compounded the story, turning what looked like a personal struggle into a pattern that extended across an entire bloodline. Dana White's comment about Jon embracing the bad guy role followed, and Jon pushed back with the measured frustration of a man tired of the label. The chain of events constituted a broader assault, not just on Jon Jones the fighter, but on everything the Jones name was supposed to represent.
Just the latest in a list of troubles for Jones. He was suspended by the UFC after he crashed into a pregnant woman and bolted from the scene, then admitted he'd been partying before the crash.
There's something in him that's causing him to keep going back to that place.
He is his own worst enemy.
Did anybody step in and say, hey man, you got to get your shit together?
Oh, I've had a lot of people tell me I need to get my shit together.
I think everybody thinks of me like, or us like high school coaches, like, well, did you get him on the right track? He's almost 30 years old. He's a grown-ass man. This isn't high school, nor is it even college.
Throughout my whole career, everybody said to me, John, what would happen if you didn't drink, you didn't smoke? Imagine how great you could be.
My Open St. Preux fight was the first fight it was my worst performance.
And soon the dark side expands beyond John.
And much of what happened when Chandler Jones walked into the Foxborough police station on Sunday morning is still a mystery. The defensive end went into the police station around 7:45 Sunday morning.
Definitely involved in Class D Delta before this happened, just so you know.
Is he good? Is he cool? Yeah, Chandler's doing great.
And 6 months after Chandler, John tests positive for PEDs.
I'm very disappointed with all the stuff that's happened to him, obviously, and
He's been in that same situation a couple of times. This is not the first time.
well, he definitely is a wild mother.
He is.
The loss of his mother arrived less than a year later, and the weight of it broke through whatever walls he had managed to rebuild. He checked into what he described not as a rehab center, but as a trauma center, a place for grief and addiction and everything in between. He sat down and talked about learning what depression actually was, what trauma does to a person, what addiction looks like from the inside. He said he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, said it slowly, like someone testing whether the feeling was real or just temporary relief. He called it something he planned to do every summer, not as punishment, but as maintenance, as the work required to stay functional. For the first time in years, the John Jones speaking in that moment sounded like a man genuinely trying to control Hyde instead of feeding him.
Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with embracing a role as a bad guy. Done some bad things, but I strive to be a good person.
And less than a year later, their mother passes away.
When we spoke earlier this year, you told me that you checked into a rehab center.
Yeah, I did.
Because of everything that was going on, plus to deal with your mom's passing, right?
Yeah.
When you're there,
it was more like a trauma center. It was trauma and rehab. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got to learn a lot about the whole thing, about depression, about trauma, about addiction, and I feel tremendous. I feel a weight lifted off my shoulders, and I actually think it's going to be something that I do every summer.
Cleaner controls his urges, not the other way around. The dark side isn't about taking stupid risks and getting in trouble. That would show weakness. You can feel your desires and act on them or not act on them. Your self-control is what distinguishes you from everyone else. Look at what happened to poor Dr. Jekyll. He ultimately killed himself when he realized Mr. Hyde, his dark side, was emerging on its own, and he could no longer control.
The cleaner philosophy is ruthless on this point. You feel your urges, but self-control is the single thing that separates you from everyone else. Dr. Jekyll ultimately destroyed himself the moment he realized Mr. Hyde was emerging on his own, without needing the potion to be summoned anymore. That is the fate that waits at the end of the road for any cleaner who mistakes indulgence for identity and calls the darkness a gift. John Jones had stood at that exact crossroads more times than anyone could count and had chosen the wrong door with stunning consistency. Joe Rogan had watched every chapter unfold with the particular anguish of someone who genuinely believed they were witnessing the greatest talent ever assembled. The physical gifts were never the question. The question was always whether the man holding them would let them reach their full and rightful destination. Then he answered the identity question himself, and the answer landed heavier than any result from any fight card in the history of the sport. A reporter asked him directly, "Are you a good guy trying to be bad or a bad guy trying to be good?" He paused, held the question for a moment, and then said it plainly, "I think I'm a bad guy that's trying to be good." He framed it in religious terms, said we are all born into sin, said righteousness is not a condition, but a daily, conscious decision. That single sentence dismantled years of external speculation and replaced all of it with the most clarifying self-assessment any athlete had ever offered publicly. It was not an excuse, it was not a deflection. It was a man drawing the map of his own interior and handing it over. The Hall of Fame ceremony was supposed to be the moment where the legacy received its formal and permanent bronze seal of recognition. Instead, it became the most raw and unfiltered public breakdown in John Jones's career, a scream of anguish dressed in a celebration suit. He stood there, just back from the ceremony, and unleashed something that sounded less like anger and more like a man drowning inside his own story. "What do you have to show for it?" He said it like a question aimed at himself, at the sport, at everyone watching. The accolades were supposed to feel like a rival, but they felt like documentation, a trophy case built around a man still fighting his most important war. This was not a performance, not a media moment, not a calculated persona. This was Hyde showing up to a Jekyll event uninvited and uncontrolled. What makes Jon Jones the most compelling figure this sport has ever produced is not the wins, not the finishes, not the octagon dominance. It is the fact that he is the only fighter in history who could be simultaneously the greatest and his own most dangerous opponent at all times. Rogan, Dana White, trainers, family members, every voice in his orbit said the same thing from every direction, and he heard all of it. Hearing it and acting on it were two entirely different operations, happening in two entirely different parts of the same complicated and brilliant human being. The tragedy is not the controversies, the suspensions, the incidents, the arrests. The tragedy is the gap between what he was and what he could have been. That gap is the documentary. That gap is the debate. That gap is why every conversation about the greatest of all time still circles back to his name. He wheels back up, and the MMA world watches again, because the story is not finished and may never reach a clean or comfortable resolution. The physical tools remain, the reach, the IQ, the instincts, the chin, the championship pedigree that no single era could contain or define. But championships are won and lost in the space between what you are capable of and what you are willing to do to get there. Jon Jones has shown the world both sides of that equation with a transparency that most athletes protect themselves from ever having to display publicly. He is a bad guy trying to be good. His words, delivered without a lawyer, without a PR team, without a single hedge. That is the most honest sentence ever spoken by the most talented and most tortured fighter who ever stood under the lights of this sport.
Are you a good guy trying to be bad, or are you a bad guy trying to be good?
That's a good question. I think I am a bad guy that's trying to be good. Just because religiously we're all sinners. We're all sinners. We're born into sin. It's our nature to sin. And it's a decision to try to do the right thing.
What do you have to show for it?
I came from my Hall of Fame ceremony, and I'm black, and I have my friends, and I did nothing to you. And I'm like, it was at a ceremony with a Hall of Fame friend.